Mary had a little lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
It's Friday, you bastards.
For 60 years, 50 states, but Congress is now one step closer to adding another.
D.C. statehood is an idea whose time has come.
The House passing a bill that would make Washington, District of Columbia, the state of Washington Douglas Commonwealth, honoring abolitionist Frederick Douglass. The mayor would become the new governor, and the 700,000 plus people living in D.C., who already pay the most federal taxes per capita, would get federal voting rights, including 2 new senators. That would almost certainly mean 2 more Democrats, given D.C.'s political leanings, with the GOP intensely opposed to statehood.
Democrat support is really of H.R. 51. Democratic partisanship, Democrat power.
Some Republicans argue D.C. is too small.
D.C. wouldn't even qualify as a singular congressional district.
It does have more people than Vermont or Wyoming. Some have argued D.C.'s not Wyoming.
Wyoming is a well-rounded, working-class state.
Democrats blast that as thinly veiled racism.
I had no idea there were so many syllables in the word white.
And one Republican argued this.
D.C. would be the only state without an airport, without a car dealership.
D.C. does have car dealerships, and the Constitution doesn't mention those anyway. As for the Founding Fathers, some conservatives say they never intended that the nation's capital become a state.
Anybody who knows a law book from a J. Crew catalog knows it's unconstitutional.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says the district cannot become a state.
If that happens, D.C. would have the highest percentage of black residents in the country. Top Democrats frame statehood as a civil rights issue, and supporters include the Biden administration, about half of all voters nationwide, and a lot of folks who call the district home.
It makes me feel as if I am being robbed of a right that I should have.
It feels that my voice in Congress is not represented.
Oh! Yeah. So there's an idea. What do you think? What do you think, everybody? What do you think? I like it. I'm down with it. I really am. I mean, this idea that D.C. Should be the 51st state, yes. And here's the thing. For the very first time, it passed the House. There's a statehood bill for the District of Columbia to become Washington Douglas, the Commonwealth of Washington Douglas, and it passed. It passed the House 216 to 208. So, of course, now it goes over to the Senate where all good ideas die because it's razor thin and you need 10. You need a supermajority in a Senate that's already overrepresenting white states. Like, there was a little factoid in that report that I really want everybody to, internalize. I want you to have that piece of information. There are about 712,000 people that live in D.C. right now, the district. They pay the most taxes per capita of any population in the United States, and they have no representation. So that's 712,000 people, which is a similar population to the entire state of Wyoming and the entire state of Vermont. And they each have 4 senators. They each have 2 senators. 4 senators to represent 2 states with about 700,000 people, right? And D.C. has no senators. So, listen, they don't want, senators from D.C. They don't want that to happen. Why? Why don't they want that to happen? Because the people who are closest to government, the people who live in the district. See, this is why Republicans are such front-running phonies. They always go, the people closest to the issue should have the loudest voice in the room because they're familiar. Well, these are the people that live where the government is, okay? And they want representation. They don't have any representation. And yet you have Wyoming with about the same population. They have 2 senators. You have Vermont, an entire state with about the same population. They have 2 senators. But D.C., which has the same population, they get no senators. They just keep paying taxes. Do you know what it says on their license plates? In the district, it says no taxation without representation. And it has said that forever. And they still don't have any representation. No, this is another ridiculous racist argument. Representative Mondaire Jones, he stood up on the floor to point out the real reason why D.C. has not been admitted.
Mr. Speaker, I have had enough of my colleagues' racist insinuations that somehow the people of Washington, D.C. are incapable or even unworthy of our democracy. One Senate Republican said that D.C. wouldn't be a, quote, well-rounded working class state. I had no idea there were so many syllables in the word white. One of my House Republican colleagues said that D.C. shouldn't be a state because the district doesn't have a landfill.
A landfill.
My goodness. With all the racist trash my colleagues have brought to this debate, I can see why they're worried about having a place to put it. Oh! The truth is, there is no good faith argument for disenfranchising over 700,000 people, Mr. Speaker, most of whom are people of color.
And, of course, they were, oh, take down his words, take down. So he withdrew his comments. Mondaire Jones did. He withdrew his comments because calling them what they are is somehow, it's offensive. I should not have to deal with my racism. I should not have to live up to your standards. I want to be a racist, but you can't call me that. If you call me, I'm going to have your words taken. I'm going to say you were the one that was out of line. You. No, it's out of line that you have all these people without any representation in the Senate, okay? And also, you know, Eleanor Holmes Norton, whose bill this is, she doesn't get to vote in the House of Representatives. Eleanor Holmes Norton is, she represents the district as a delegate, meaning she doesn't get to vote on any issue that comes before the House of Representatives. So she put this bill on the floor. She's the one who wrote this bill to say, just admit us already. Just let us be the 51st state. Now, there are people that are going to be very aware that the Capitol, that where the Senate and the House is, and the White House is supposed to be a federal district. It's not supposed to be a state. So they thought of that too. And what they decided in Eleanor Holmes Norton's bill is they would shrink the Capitol to 2 square miles. And that they would carve out the 2 square miles for the Senate and the House to not be under the jurisdiction of any state, and the same for the White House, not be under the jurisdiction of any state. So she already thought of that. So now there is no reason why the District of Columbia can't be the 51st state, except that senators in the House, don't want to see 2 more senators show up for work come 2022. But we have a year and a half to get this done. We have a year and a half to get this completed. And I say that this is a good goal. I say that this is the right thing to do. It's ridiculous that you have populations of almost 1 million people without any representation, without any vote. I mean, they can't, it's just so unbelievable. They don't have to. I'm sorry. But anyway, so there's that. That's good news. And I wanted to bring some good news to everybody. So happy Bleach Injection Day. Yes, today is 1 year. Today is 1 year since it's the first anniversary of Donald Trump telling us that we should inject disinfectants and shine bright lights inside of ourselves, lightsabers up the bum, in order to beat back COVID, which he thought was a hoax. Yeah, he said this on April 23rd, 2020. Now, if Donald Trump were a football player and he had said that same thing, they would have taken him directly to the hospital to check for concussion. But he's not a football player. He was our... Oh, God, he was the president of the United States of America. What a surreal moment. The dumbest thing anybody has ever said, and still somehow wasn't the worst or most offensive thing that the former guy ever said. No. I mean, I just knew then he was going to end up killing us all. Yep.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Sarah Cooper.
We hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light. And I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do, either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that, too. Sounds interesting.
We'll get the right folks who could.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
Now, the president, the former guy, he said he was kidding. That was a joke. When it was pointed out how ridiculously idiotic and stupid and dangerous and deadly that kind of thing from the podium of the commander-in-chief could be, and that people were drinking fish food, remember that, and died, he said, oh, it was a joke. It was a joke. And I really thought when I heard him say that, this man's going to kill us all. And then I realized the people that still follow him are part of a death cult. Well, he didn't kill us all. That would be wrong. He only managed to kill about 500,000 of us. That would be correct. But the people who follow him are part of a death cult. There is no question in my mind. The first trial of an insurrectionist, the first trial of a supporter of the former guy, began this week. The guy's name is Brendan Hunt. He's in his 30s. He's not a child. And apparently his father is a judge. And he was texting his father all kinds of extremist views. And his father was, offering what the media has declared are measured responses. So his text to his father, he was obsessed with Nazism. He was obsessed with Donald Trump. He was obsessed with the fact that he believed that the election was stolen. And in fact, he had gotten past the point where he cared whether or not it was a free and fair election. He just wanted Donald Trump to stay president no matter what tactics had to be employed. He texted his father, the judge. Now, this man also worked, for the courts. He was like a court clerk. He's been fired. But anyway, he actually texted his dad, quote, Trump should just declare martial law, cancel the transfer of power, and round up the domestic enemies of our republic. His father is a retired Queens, which is where I grew up, a retired Queens family court judge. Can you imagine? This is the man that's got the power to keep your family intact or take your children. Okay, that's his father. So he tells this to his father, John Hunt, in a text message. He says, quote, the military and the American people will back him. And in the same conversation in texts, which have now been produced as evidence in the trial, he said to his father, Hitler took over Germany because it was necessary, and Trump needs to overtake the government to keep Democrats from taking power, or they will throw his family in jail and destroy this country. His dad, the judge, family court judge response, he wrote, all of these election issues have to and will be resolved through the legal process. He doesn't tell his son, you're insane and you're starting to sound like a Nazi. And what do you mean like Hitler did? This is America. No. And then he's caught on video discussing the riot. And he calls the elected officials whose lives he was threatening cowards. And asks, why, if this COVID stuff is so deadly, why weren't you evacuated in full body condoms or something like that? This is a 37-year-old man, and in another clip, he is opining, describing it, shooting of a unarmed, peaceful, Ashley Babbitt. He's actually describing, how Ashley Babbitt was killed by a Capitol police officer as she attempted to breach the barricaded doors, which they put furniture in front of to keep the insurrectionists. I don't even want to call them protesters. And then he encouraged everybody to go back to Washington after the president told them to go home in peace and everything. And, we love you. You're very special. Then he went back on Facebook and he said we should redo this on January 20th, Inauguration Day, and wrote, quote, "It would be funny if Pence got a nice fat bullet to the head." Now, his lawyer is arguing that this is all protected free speech. But I just want you to understand that here in Florida and yesterday in Oklahoma and in Iowa, and I told you this yesterday, there are these anti-protest bills that are being passed. In Florida, it was passed that said that if protesters are bothering you in any way, like if they're, on a public street, just go ahead and run them over. Go ahead and run them over. That's how much they don't believe in free speech unless the speech is threatening the lives of Democratic legislators. Now, I want to show you what Tucker Carlson considers his right to free speech last night, okay? And how, when Donald Trump was caught saying the stupidest thing any president has ever said in the history of the United States of America with regard to a pandemic or how to cure it, he said he was being funny. He said he was being funny. Okay, this is Tucker Carlson, and this is him trying to be funny.
After a decades-long search by a blue-ribbon commission of internationally renowned experts from McKinsey & Company and Yale Law School, the Democratic Party announced that it has finally identified the single most grotesque, most dystopian, most anti-human policy ever adopted by a Western government. They've been looking hard to find that, as you may have noticed. At a triumphant press conference yesterday, leading Democrats unveiled their findings, which are now a plank in the party's platform. They're going to allow children to stab each other. Now, stabbing people has long been taboo in this country, especially for those under the age of 18. For decades, young Americans have hidden their switchblades, their stilettos, their K-bars, their machetes. Kids were forced to live as if plunging blades into strangers was something to be ashamed of, instead of a normal, healthy part of childhood. But no more. Knife fights are human rights. Stabbing can finally come out of the closet. In some ways, it's a return to the future. The right to stab has been restored to the pantheon of freedoms our Mayan ancestors enumerated thousands of years ago in our founding document, the Declaration of Diversity. Going forward, allowing children to stab others will be enshrined in law, alongside America's other core foundational rights: the right to commit voter fraud, the right to free body piercings, the right of trans illegal aliens with pituitary disorders to become fighter pilots. These are the rights upon which this nation was founded, the rights the Democratic Party exists to protect.
This was his commentary on the situation with Ma'Khia Bryant. This is his commentary. I guess his takeaway from the murder of George Floyd is that Democrats are pro-counterfeit $20 bills. This is sick.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
On Tuesday, some Neanderthal in Columbus, Ohio, a racist probably, called 911 to complain about an attempted stabbing, which at the time, if you can believe it, was considered a bad thing.
Oh, God.
Listen.
These grown girls over here trying to fight us, trying to stab us, trying to put our hands on our grandma. Get here now. We need a police officer here now.
Someone's trying to stab us and get our grandma. We need a police officer here now. Now, if your first thought when you heard those words was, calm down, racist. Stabbing people is an important part of childhood development. If that was your response, give yourself an equity ribbon. There may be a job for you in MSNBC primetime.
Oh, good
a stabbing? What's the harm there? That was our thought. And then we saw a clearer version of the tape of what happened next. And we will concede that just for a moment, we wondered if allowing kids to kill people with knives was really the enlightened idea they told us it was.
What?
So we'll let you decide. Here's a teenager called Ma'Khia Bryant. She's the one with the knife. She was seconds from plunging that knife into someone else when the police arrived. So it doesn't matter who you voted for or what your views of modern America are. You don't need to guess watching that tape what was happening. If you listen carefully, you can hear someone say it. I'm going to stab the F out of you. And there's no question she was going to do that. Her hand was in the air. The knife was heading into the downstroke. The other girl was just an instant from being stabbed. So if the cop wanted to save that girl, he had to shoot, and he did.
Why is he mocking anything? No one that I'm aware of has said anything about whether or not this was a proper use of force. Almost every responsible broadcaster I know, including myself, I know I said it, refuses to have an opinion about what happened there because we don't know what happened there. I said it. I've been saying it since this story broke. That it's a different story than a George Floyd story. It's a different story than a Dante Wright story. It's a different story than the guy who was killed yesterday in North Carolina. I mean, there's all these stories of unarmed black men going the opposite direction from the police, unarmed, and being killed. But Tucker Carlson sees this story and decides that this is going to be his launching pad for trashing the media that isn't racist. We all said we don't know what happened there. Anybody I know who is looking at that is saying we have to wait. This is tough. This is a hard call. No one knows what happened here. We don't even know if that was Ma'Khia Bryant on the 911 call. Neither does he. So I got to tell you, this sarcastic little thing that he's got here to shroud his racism, it's pretty much indistinguishable from when he isn't trying to be sarcastic to shroud his racism. They're so identical that's why it doesn't work. I mean, I know, he would just say, just like what Donald Trump said when he was dead serious about inject yourself with disinfectant or shine the light up your bum or whatever it is, stick light. I mean, it's the same exact BS cover. Oh, it's just sarcasm. Oh, it's just, I'm trying to be funny. I mean, it's not funny because we don't know what's true. That's number one. And only true things are funny. And number two, he's trying too hard to be mean for it to be funny, which is pointless because he doesn't have to try to be mean. He is mean. And we know that because this is a guy who in his college yearbook, which we just found out, I mean, he apparently, there were some calls made. Somebody a reporter was going through, Tucker Carlson's history because they're trying to figure out, was he always like this? Was he always racist? Was he always an ugly human? Was he always, bigoted? Was he always full of hate? And so Eric Wemple from the Washington Post actually got a hold of Tucker Carlson's college yearbook. And I guess they gave him a heads up because, usually when they're going to go to print about something about you, at least this is my experience, they call you and they ask you, do you want to make a comment? Because they're about to go to press with this piece of evidence about you or this information about you. And did you want to say something about it? Well, apparently Tucker Carlson was trying to get ahead of this story because all of a sudden out of nowhere the other night, he's sitting there talking to his audience and he's talking about his college yearbook, and nobody understood why he was doing that. Why was he doing that?
Jeff Bezos had one of his minions, a mentally unbalanced middle-aged man called Eric Wemple, pull our dusty college yearbook and call around to see if we'd done anything naughty at the age of 19. That sounds like fun. Let us know if you hear any good stories. But before Bezos drops any more of his billions on opposition research, you should know that it will not affect any election outcome. This is a news show. It's not a political campaign.
It's a news show.
No one here is running for anything or plans to. On the other hand, if Jeff Bezos wants to come over to reminisce about 1987 on this show, he's always welcome, anytime.
Okay, so what was in Tucker Carlson's yearbook? Now you have to remember that Tucker Carlson mocked Governor Ralph Northam, not because it was racist, but because he thought Ralph Northam, as a Democrat, was being hypocritical. Because in Ralph Northam's college yearbook, he went to a party in blackface. Remember, that was a big thing? It was a big contretemps, right? Well, in Tucker Carlson's college yearbook, he actually puts down that he is a member of the Dan White fan club. Now, who the hell is Dan White? Well, Dan White is the person who killed Harvey Milk, the first openly gay legislator in San Francisco. Okay, and he put in his college yearbook that he was part of the Dan White fan club, and also gave a shout out to Jesse Helms. Jesse Helms, who was a white supremacist senator who said that he didn't believe in AIDS research, right? Because the reason why gays were dying of AIDS is because God was smiting them, right? They were engaged in unnatural, activity. But I don't know what's more disturbing, the fact that Tucker Carlson thinks that an anti-gay assassin is worth celebrating, or he thought it was so clever that he made it the centerpiece of his college yearbook. Because, people actually choose their college yearbook captions because they understand that it's going to define who they want to be or who they hope to be in the adult world. So in this case, Tucker Carlson's definition of himself turned out to be incredibly accurate. Now, I didn't graduate college, as you know, but if I had, I would have put a lot of thought into what I wanted my college yearbook to say, considering that people would use things like that to decide whether or not you got employed. But he did put a lot of thought into his Dan White reference. It's just that, as usual, Tucker Carlson's thoughts are extremely disturbing and ugly. No different than the insurrectionist 37-year-old man who, Hitler was right. Hitler was right. Well, at least he was right when it came to murdering gay people, if you're Tucker Carlson, right? If you're Tucker Carlson. Listen, somebody needs to, just get him the hell off of these TV screens, because he's dangerous at this point.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Dante Wright's mother and father grieving their son, their baby boy.
I never imagined that I'd be standing here. The roles should completely be reversed. My son should be burying me. Oh, my son had a smile that was worth $1 million. When he walked in the room, he lit up the room. He was a brother, a jokester. He was loved by so many. He's gonna be so missed.
Take your time, Katie.
I don't really speak much, but words can't even explain how I feel right now. That was my son. I'm going, man.
How could you look at that, listen to them, and not feel something? They're burying their son, shot to death by a police officer who shouted, "Taser, taser." Burying him just 2 days after the police officer who murdered George Floyd, who kneeled on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, was found guilty. Burying him 2 days after 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant was shot to death by a police officer after she lunged at another young woman with a knife. Burying him the day after Andrew Brown Jr. was shot and killed while deputies were serving a warrant. A warrant, we're learning tonight, was for felony drug charges. Authorities say that they can't release the body cam video without a court order, and I just want to be very clear about this. The facts in all these cases are very different in every single case. And we need to know all the facts before we can know what happened.
So what was that rant about Tucker Carlson? It was based on bullcrap is what it was. You know what I said and what I continue to say about the Ma'Khia case. I don't know enough to have an opinion. And I'm not really sure how people have such strong opinions in this country based on no facts. I'm not sure how they get there. I'm not sure if their Google machine is broken. I'm not sure if they forgot how to read or if they failed reading comprehension. I don't know what the deal in this country is with this prevalent, pervasive ignorance, but very strong opinions. Now, I can live with ignorance in this weird way. You want to be ignorant? That's the way you choose to live your life. You think it's giving you some sort of freedom from responsibility or the need to do something. If you don't know, you don't have to act. If you don't know, you're not responsible to do something to right the wrong. You choose to live that way, you're free to do it. But when you start forming these very strong opinions about the exact situations that you refuse to educate yourself about or refuse to know about or even understand even one thing about the thing that you have this very strong opinion about, that's when I turn against you. That's when I just can't stomach you. I can't tolerate you. I just can't. I don't know how that happens in this country where people choose to be ignorant, fine, but then they have these very strong opinions about the exact same things that we're talking about here, where we have drilled down on every damn thing we could possibly know about a situation. And if there's not enough to know about a situation, we tell you we have no opinion yet. There's not enough things to know. We don't have enough facts to form one. But Tucker Carlson has decided that he's going to mock everything and solve nothing. And that is what his show is about now. Mocking everything and solving no problems. Riling people up over made up stuff. Stuff that no one ever said. And yet he is a living, breathing example of bigotry and hatred from the very get-go. This is a privileged little snot-nosed, private school educated, multi-millionaire many times over. He's part of the Swanson family fortune. That's Tucker Carlson's money. That's where Tucker Carlson hails from, the Swanson fortune. Swanson TV dinners, frozen dinners. And this little snot-nose is going to sit on the TV and he's going to have strong opinions about the life of, or the death of, fill in the blank, when there aren't enough facts to know anything about the life of or the death of fill in the blank. It is so horrendous. And it's dangerous to have somebody insinuate that there are facts here. And the facts tell him that Democrats are trying to make, I don't know, counterfeit $20 bills okay, or stabbing part of the childhood experience. What even makes you go there? What even makes you sit there in front of a television camera and say stuff like that? It's just, and that whole channel has been like this for 20 some odd years. And people said, well, what could it possibly, it can't hurt. I mean, this is what hatred does. This is when you mainstream hatred, when you actually make it shameless, when you say that it's okay to be in people's living rooms lying and producing bigotry and hatred in the community over and over, night after night, day after day. That it can't do any harm to democracy. It's okay. Listen, that's why, we have our first trial of a Hitler lover, Nazi loving, Trump supporting insurrectionist at the tender age of 37 years old, texting his father, a family court judge, Hitler was right. How do you think that happens? Doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because you mainstream it. It happens because there's an entire network dedicated to it. An entire network dedicated to hate, hating others, blaming others, ridiculing others, inserting, words into people's mouths that they never said. And when you get caught doing that and somebody sues you for defamation, meaning that you've been lying about things that they said or didn't say, you simply assert to a court that no reasonable man would believe anything Tucker Carlson says. And then you live with the fallout. And that's where we are. And, you know, people, why do you look at them? Because it's dangerous. That's why. And it's been dangerous for a really, really long time. And this is how we got here. This is only a part of how we got here, but this is how we got here. You know, we started down this road with thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of conservative talk radio inhabiting AM radio. Once AM music radio moved to FM because it was better fidelity. It was better quality. It was stereo. It was great, blah, blah, blah. And the entire AM dial, this whole media, this communication method was just left on its own. And they deregulated it. Bill Clinton signed it. The Telecommunications Deregulation Act of 1996. Bill Clinton signed it. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they took over these empty hours and filled it with lies and hatred and ugliness and ignorance and named it excellence and named it, smart people stuff. I'm doing this with my brain, half of my brain tied behind my back, and everybody can see that these people are the ones to blame for your lot in life, and these people are and the unions must be dismantled. I mean, just literally talking people into voting against their own best interests over and over and over and over again, talking them into redistribution of wealth from them to the richest Americans, and it will trickle down to them. And if you don't see that, then you're just, there's something wrong with you. You must be a feminazi, or you must be, a socialist, or you must be a, fill in the blank, whatever name of the, day, whatever name du jour that they were calling us then, right? And all I did when I actually decided I was going to go back to school, educate myself, and jump onto the talk radio, all I did was say to myself, somebody needs to debunk these people. These people are dangerous. Somebody needs to actually show that they are lying. Play their words back and show exactly how they are lying. And it just continued until we got 70 million people voting for a reality TV star and expecting that it was going to be beautiful, that he would be up to the task of beating back a pandemic and protecting 500,000 lives that we've lost. I mean, come on. And even that number, and even now, it's not enough for people to wake up. And God help you if you do wake up, then they call you woke. This is the new feminazi. This is the new name. Wow.
Mary had a little man. The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
At what point does desensitization kick in? At what point are we feeding the malevolent proclivities of those who consume with mouthwatering gratification what is, in essence, a snuff film? At what point do we stop staring at these grotesque, dehumanizing images and start taking a hard look at the society that sowed this bitter harvest? At what point? At what point? At what point? It's like the new blaxploitation, and it comes as America is having a reckoning with race and police violence. What has all this done to America's psyche? All of these videos, all of this death. Listen to what one Texas mom told CNN about a kid's game that went horribly, horribly wrong.
What started off as a friendly game of cops and robbers quickly turned south when several kids tackled my 8-year-old to the ground. As he lay with his face pressed into the cement, he pleaded with them to get off of him. He told them he couldn't breathe. He laid there hopeless, hoping somebody would step in. As he struggled to break free, one of the children said, "Hey, put your knee on his neck."
A child saying, "Put your knee on his neck." That is what we've come to. That's why we cannot turn away from all this. We can't sweep it under the rug.
I mean, it is unbelievable that now you're going to have 8-year-olds learn this kind of behavior, bigotry, hatred, brutality, whatever you want to call it. But that's what happens when you have parents that literally turn on the TV and see somebody mocking death, mocking it and solving no problem. All for their own enrichment, for their own self-preservation, for ratings. And the ratings are putrid, okay? What we're talking about here with cable news, all of it, is about 3 million viewers. You know, the difference between CNN and MSNBC and Fox News on any given night is like, I don't know, 25, 30,000 people. Because every one of them get around 3 million viewers. Some get 1.5 million, some get 2, some get 3. That's what they're fighting for? That's what they're willing to destroy this country for? 3 million viewers. 3 million. I mean, you're talking about like the last episode of Cheers, what, 80 million Americans watched it? Now they're down to fighting over 3 million bigots. 3 million ugly Americans who will tune in that swill night after night and preach it so loud that their kids actually learn it and go play with their friends and say, "Hey, put your knee on his neck." Oh my God. We're building another generation of this, another one, also that Tucker can continue to be a rich guy. Oh God, oh God. I have to tell you, this is just heinous. This is unbelievable. And you know, this entire Republican, the remnants, this is a remnant, what's left of the Republican Party. Literally 25% of America identify as Republican anymore, you know, thank God. And that's why they're fighting over so few people. But I mean, couldn't we possibly do better? Can't we possibly just do better? You know, Val Demings, who was the police chief in Orlando, she's been on TV all week. And I'm so glad that she's been on TV all week, really. Because I think when she was named as one of the impeachment managers in the second impeachment for inciting violence, for inciting an insurrection, literally, for putting Nazism into the bloodstream of the already white supremacists, the already white nationalists. That's what Donald Trump's second impeachment was about. Okay, so they announced that Val Demings was going to be an impeachment manager, and I don't think a lot of you understood who she is. And she is a former police officer. She's a former police chief. She's been a police chief in Orlando, Florida, and 27 years as a police officer. So she had a big fight with Jim Jordan this week. And I don't think that was ever explained properly. Why was Jim Jordan attacking Val Demings? And why was Val Demings saying, what's wrong with you, Jim Jordan? Did I strike a nerve? First of all, Val Demings had the floor. And they were talking about the police abuse, and they were talking about, legislation, the George Floyd Policing Act, and they were talking about this COVID hate bill, right, against Asians. They called it, the reason why it was an anti-hate bill for penalties for people who single out Asian Americans is because of the President of the United States. It is because Donald Trump called COVID Kung Flu, because Donald Trump called it the China virus, right? All this. And so because this president was just feeding constant hatred and racism of all, women, misogyny and anti-black rhetoric. Oh, there's my African American, and now Asian with the coronavirus. We had to try and we passed some legislation to protect Asian Americans from this unbelievable onslaught of hatred directed at them. And they were debating this. And Val Demings had the floor. And she was trying to, talk about all this hatred and how it's infected our entire society. And Jim Jordan interrupted her. And she said, I have the floor now, right? And this was during the debate for this piece of legislation against making it a hate crime to, single out somebody for their race and their race being Asian. And anyway, so she literally... They just showed it as like, oh, look, it's loud. This is something like, and never explained that Jim Jordan, the reason why she was saying to Jim Jordan, look, you only like the police when you like the police. You don't really care about the police, because if you did, during the insurrection, 138 police officers were hurt. They were injured. Some had their fingers broken. Others of them had their heads beat in. Others of them had, they were beaten with crutches. They were beaten with hockey sticks. They were beaten with flagpoles. They were beaten, with their own shields. And you said nothing. You were silent. And nobody really talked about, what she was, actually trying to get to. And I just found that, like, really amazing. Anyway, so now they're asking, here's the little clip.
It's interesting to see my colleagues on the other side of the aisle support the police when it is politically convenient to do so. Law enforcement officers risk their lives every day. They deserve better, and the American people deserve. I have the floor, Mr. Jordan. What? Did I strike a nerve? Law enforcement officers deserve better than to be utilized as pawns. And you and your colleagues are ashamed of yourself.
Okay, the reason she said that was because Jim Jordan had no problem, in fact, still voted not to certify the election after 138 police officers were wounded at the Capitol. Had no problem with it. It's so interesting, these pro-police people, like the Tucker Carlsons, like the Greg Gutfeld. Oh, my God, they're all trying to be comedians now. I just can't stand it. Anyway, they had no problem with the insurrection. They had no problem with people attacking police officers when those people were white nationalists.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Val Demings, everyone.
Congressman, a lot of us watch you in those situations, and we don't know how you do it. We don't know how you do it without, on the moments when you aren't calling people like Jim Jordan to task. And then when those moments come and you're not allowed the full breadth of what you want to say, what it's like in those moments. What do you wish people like Jim Jordan understood?
Well, what Jim Jordan wants us all to try to remember are the Black Lives Matter protests when he tried to remind us how he stood by law enforcement. It appears to me that he only felt motivated to stand with law enforcement during that time because the majority of the protesters were Black or brown. But when it came to people who looked like him breaking into the Capitol, trying to undermine our democracy, stop a free and fair election, the certification of the votes, Jim Jordan and many of his colleagues on his side of the aisle were silent. And so, we have a lot of critical issues, Lawrence, that we're dealing with in this country. COVID-19, criminal justice reform, infrastructure, putting people back to work, saving our small businesses. We just don't have time for shenanigans and political games.
So here you have a party that's serious about solving problems. And there you have a party that's just pointing fingers, mocking people, being rude, being obnoxious, being, disruptive, all just so nothing ever gets done. Because they have no ideas about how to fix the things that they break. They're very good at breaking things. They're just terrible at reparations. They're just terrible at repairing. They're terrible at restoration. They suck at it. And so all they do is mock everybody who would like to live in the 21st century. Just mock everybody with any good ideas that might require an investment in us. Mock them, point at them, excoriate them, but offer no solution ever. So, here we have police reform bills, okay? Here we have vaccines going out the door. Here we have, an infrastructure proposal, right? Here we have, a proposal for protecting the elections, H.R. 1 and S1, right? Here we have, a proposal that Washington, the District of Columbia become the 51st state. All they're going to do is say they don't even have a landfill. Why would they be a state? There's the same number of people in Washington, D.C. who are taxed at a much higher rate than the same number of people in Wyoming. But they have 2 senators. You see what I mean? All they do is mock. Everything is mock. And it's always by using racist, sentiment. It's very sick. It's very sad. I cannot believe this is where we are in 2021. I just can't. Rhonda in Erie.
Okay, so the cruelty is the point.
Right.
Tucker Carlson and people like him, they're the embodiment of that statement. And what's so dangerous about what it is that they're doing is that they've got the bully pulpit, right? So they can just keep on, spewing this filth to their audience who will never question it. Never try to find any information to the contrary. I mean, and feed into people's misery. I mean, listen, if I didn't have any lips like Tucker Carlson, I'd be unhappy too. But it's clear that the man is joyless. He's joyless, and he's rich, super rich.
Super filthy rich.
There are all kinds of studies out there, social studies, significant, well-done studies that indicate that there is a correlation between lack of empathy and, ability to stand in someone else's shoes and money, right? Tucker Carlson doesn't have interactions with real people. He doesn't know what's happening with his actual audience. What he's doing is spewing ideological filth, which is, based in racism. Well, any ism that you can possibly talk about, because I haven't ever seen him talk about anything that is not deeply steeped in some sort of bigotry. Never. I've never heard him give any kind of perspective other than deeply racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic. I mean, never, right? So I just want to echo what you said earlier. It's dangerous.
It is dangerous. And you know what's really disgusting is that here in this society where we're saying, hey, if you see protesters and they're blocking your pathway, just run them over. You have immunity under the law. And then these people are going to stand behind the First Amendment and say, but we have a right to be hateful. We have a right to do. Yeah, but you have no right to lie. Okay. And so their defense has now become, it used to be that if somebody said that you were defaming them, if you were invoking, traits about them that were demonstrably false, you could sue them. But now they say, oh, no reasonable man would believe Tucker Carlson. The problem is that the men that watch Tucker Carlson don't know that that was Tucker Carlson's defense, is that you people who are viewing him, he actually said you are the dumbest of the dumb, okay? Because if you were a reasonable man, you would know that this is complete bullcrap. But they don't know that that was his defense in a court of law. They don't understand that that is how he wiggles out of being held accountable for lying.
Let me tell you what else they don't understand. They don't understand that when he is denigrating large groups of people, he includes them in that. He does not care about his audience either. All of those miserable people that he is out here spewing this stuff to, he does not give a damn about any of them either.
No,
and
because
that
if he did,
is the thing that they don't know.
Right. Because when they're standing on lines now to vote for 8 hours or 9 hours because they, told this big lie, and then you had 43 states trying to suppress voters, and they are one of those voters. They're going to just sit there and go, wait a minute, this wasn't supposed to hurt us. It was supposed to hurt them.
Well, and along those lines, okay, so these laws that they're passing in Oklahoma that basically, sanction, make these people, actors of the state, and sanctioning them to run people over in protest. Wait until the first person gets run over at a KKK rally or a Nazi rally or something. Then all of a sudden, that stuff's going to become something different. We didn't mean that you could run over.
You know what, Rhonda? We don't even have to wait that long, because the first person who tries to use that law as a defense for killing somebody, vehicular homicide, is going to find out real quick that it's an unconstitutional protection they were never entitled to, that no man is above the law, and you can't ram your car into any living, breathing human being and get away with it, no matter what your
just because you don't.
Yeah, or
just because you don't like what they say.
Oh, it isn't even that. You just can't do it, period. No matter what your freaking Republican governor says, you can't.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
It is breathtaking to see just the breadth and the number of laws and ways that Republicans are throwing bricks in front of voters. And I wonder if, when you look at it, as somebody who's been a politician, who's been an elected official, is this more straight up just sort of racist attempts to reconfigure the electorate? Or is it more GOTV? Because part of me thinks that at least some of it is GOTV, an attempt to get their voters to vote at all because their voters no longer believe in the system because they don't always get their way.
I actually think it's more of an existential panic and cowardice and laziness. What they realized in the last election was that a confluence of possibilities came into being. Communities of color that had largely not fully recognized their power became part of the electorate. Young people who had largely kept themselves at a more diminished capacity participated in elections. And because of COVID, more Americans, especially those Americans who were the most vulnerable and disadvantaged, understood that there were alternatives for participating in elections, and they did so. And rather than confront and grapple with what it means to have a more engaged and expanded electorate, they are instead working as hard as they can to not only throw up those bricks, but also to your point, to use this GOTV strategy to create a new boogeyman for their own people, for their constituents. But at the same time, they're expressing their hostility towards those communities that changed the outcome in 2020 and 2021, and those are largely communities of color. And so racial animus is absolutely a part of it. But I think overall, it's an existential crisis and an existential panic that is leading to the tactic that has worked well for so many other parties, and that is voter suppression.
Yeah, it's because they have no ideas. They don't, want to do an autopsy, okay? They don't want to look at where did we go wrong? Did we fail everybody because we said, shove a lightsaber up your butt for COVID, or hydroxychloroquine, take it. Is that where we lost them? Did we lose them because, we gave tax cuts to the wealthy and let them rot? Did we lose them because they finally caught on to the fact that we've been union busting and now they have no leverage to negotiate fair wages? I mean, where did we lose them? Instead of them doing that, the Republicans, I mean by them, instead of the Republicans sitting there and doing that, they decide, you know what? The problem is too many people showed up. Our problem in the last election wasn't that not enough people showed up. The problem in the last election for the Republicans is almost everybody showed up. Almost everybody. We had like 160 million voters in the last election, and 74 million of them voted for their guy. It wasn't enough. But there was a lot of participation. And that's why you see these voter suppression efforts. They don't it's funny. We always say the people are coming, and that freaks out politicians. They don't want the people to come. But that's what happened in this last election. The people came. And because the people showed up, Instead of saying, yeah, we should have had better ideas, or we should have pivoted on the COVID. We should have told them not to take hydroxychloroquine. We should have told them that, we're getting PPE out the door. We should have told them that no. Instead, they said, you know what? Stop them from having access. Stop them from voting. Do something. Kill them, target them, change the law, remove the access, do whatever you got to do, suppress it. Because we don't like it when the people show up. We can't win when the people show up. And that's exactly what they've been telling you. And they've said it out loud. They said the quiet part out loud all before we voted in 2020. Oh, well, if you allow people to vote by mail, which a lot of states have allowed for more than 15 years now, but if you allow everybody to vote by mail, we will never win another election. They said it because it's true. It's true. Because the majority of people in the United States would like to solve the problems and move ahead. And not every solve is going to be a perfect solve, but at least it would be progress, and we could learn from what we didn't benefit from when we passed the last bit of legislation. Like I'm telling you right now, this George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, it's far from perfect, okay? It deals with federal regulations, federal law, federal officers, and then there's two schools of thought, about this. And, Tim Scott is doing the negotiation for the Republicans, the only black Republican they have. They've made him the face of police reform. I wonder why. But that's who's doing the negotiations with Karen Bass in the House for the Democrats and Cory Booker for the Senate for the Democrats. They don't even have a House, component to the negotiating table. They only have Tim Scott because he's black, and they'll put him out front. I mean, it's really sick and sad. It's really sad. And they don't want to take away, this qualified immunity from the police. But there's already indemnification that the police have from their own contracts. So, I mean, it's crazy. But they don't want to solve the problem of police brutality. They don't want to solve it. They figure, if people's neighborhoods are so chaotic, they won't have time to pay attention to current events. They won't have time to read a newspaper. They won't have time to, get involved. I mean, it's so sad. I'm going to show you something. You want to see how mental health is handled in this country? I'm going to show you two things, okay? This is a very white woman. Okay, she's, I think, 73 years old. This is in, what's the name of the place? Lovejoy, Colorado? Yeah, and she has dementia, okay? And here's her big crime. So she went into I'm going to say a Target or a Walmart, I can't remember which, and she took, I think, some cleaning products, and she didn't pay for them. So, of course, that's called shoplifting. And so the store employees went after, her, not after her. I mean, just they went, after her. And they said, ma'am, you just walked out the door and you didn't pay. And she offered a credit card to pay. And that wasn't good enough, so they called the cops. And here's what happened.
All right, let's stop, ma'am.
Walmart.
I don't think you want to play it this way.
Loveland.
Police, stop. You want to stop? Lights on, siren, stop. You just left Walmart. Do you need to be arrested right now? No. Okay. Let's stop. Come on.
I'm going home.
Her house was 2 blocks away.
No, on the ground. Stay on the ground. On the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Bravo 242. After a short struggle, she is now detained. Come on. I am code 4.
Do that. I'm going home. I'm going home.
Oh my God. Okay, right there, he just dislocated her shoulder. He did. And he broke her arm. And she has dementia. And she's unable to make words. She's unable to speak. That's why she just could only get out, I'm going home, I'm going home, I'm going home. You think we could do better? Because I think we could do better.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Are you finished?
I'm going home.
Hey, stand up. We're not going to hold you.
Just go on the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Why are you doing this? Let me see who she is.
I'm going home. I'm going home.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to search her real quick.
Quit.
What?
Do you have to
What are you
use
doing?
that
Get
much
out of here.
aggression?
This is not your business.
You guys are okay?
Yep, we're good.
You're a little muddy, dude. I think we're doing
A little
inspection.
bloody, a little muddy. That's how it works.
Yeah. Is the blood on her?
Yeah, that's her blood.
They fractured her arm. They dislocated her shoulder. They sprained her wrist. Her body was covered in scrapes and bruises. And this poor woman was suffering from dementia. Okay, here's one that Brett found. This one's just this is ugly too. Okay, I'm warning you right now. This is from Westminster, California.
Neighbors say this isn't the woman's first run-in with police, but now an officer is on paid leave as he's being investigated for striking her. Handcuffed and on the ground, a Westminster police officer repeatedly punches a woman recorded on cell phone. Officers say she was resisting arrest.
They just get her up and they just push her back down. I think she got hurt, so she started obviously being aggressive.
Sandy Armento lives across the street. She shot the cell phone video now circulating on social media. She says at 4 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, she watched as 34-year-old Xiomara Garcia kicked the officer on the inner thigh.
She kicked, but she didn't kick him the first time. She kicked the second time, right here. And that's when he reacted and he just punched her right here.
Police say it all started when a neighbor argued with Garcia over her unleashed dog. The neighbor claimed Garcia got physical.
She basically put her fist on her arm but didn't hit her, and that's when the Asian woman left, and 20 minutes later came back with cops, and 7 or 8 cops showed up.
It all happened right here. Garcia's brother says police showed up at their home calling her by name.
She's bipolar. She has schizophrenia. I think they could do a better job since they already have history with her.
Okay, so the police called her by name. They know who she is. She has schizophrenia, and she's bipolar, and she's on medication, and they know this, and they still handcuff her, treat her aggressively, and throw her on her back to the ground and punch her in the face. Don't you think we could do better? Wouldn't it be better if mental health professionals knew her and they were the ones who responded when they heard her name, when the call comes in about her and her dog? Don't you think that would be a better result if we had mental health professionals on the other end of that 911 call? Don't you think it would be better if we had mental health professionals on the other side of a call about an old lady, a 73-year-old woman with dementia? God. And they're negotiating some Justice in Policing Act, and they don't want these police to be exposed to any liability for manhandling or treating people like this when they know she's mentally ill. Now, see, that last one, that is so sickening because they called her by her name. They knew her situation. They knew she was a woman who suffered from mental illness. And they still did this. Tom in Florida.
Hey, Randy. I just got a question for you.
little story. One of my neighbors is just total trumpet, crazy, Fox watching. And we got a discussion one time, and she said, well, things was actually coming true. She said, as soon as a Democrat is in office.
Your phone's awful.
I'm sorry. Hold on. She said, as soon as the Democrats. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had it on speaker. Didn't even know it. She said, as soon as the Democrats get in office, gasoline's going to start going up and up and up. And it actually has. You know why? It's going up over $3 a gallon here.
Sorry?
Pardon? No, I mean, do you know the reason why gas has gone up?
Yeah,
that's the only thing she's ever said correct about anything.
Yeah, it's called supply and demand.
I figured that much easy, but okay.
All right. You're welcome. Mark and Philly.
Hi, Randy. How you doing?
All right.
Hey, listen, I want to what you were just saying about Fox News and news. These right-wing news agencies, Fox News, they're I mean, we should know after 4 years. These are Russian television in America. These are propaganda networks that work for the conservative movement. Their job was to cover up all of Trump's crimes and lies and fake universities and Stormy Daniels. They cover up for those crimes. They gave a voice. How many criminals actually got a voice on Fox? Bill O'Reilly got convicted of sexual harassment. Wayne LaPerriere was on there 3 times a week, and he's indicted. Bernie Kerik, a police chief, was indicted for sexual harassment in New York. Jerry Falwell was on Fox 100 times and stood on Trump's stage supporting him. He's indicted for embezzlement and tax evasion. There was a guy named Sheriff John Clark. He's involved in that fake Build the Wall scheme where he was taking money from Trump donors. He's indicted in that Build the Wall scheme. Joe Arpaio got a voice on Fox. Cardinal Dolan got a voice on Fox. Rick Gates got a voice on Fox. Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, they're all indicted. They needed pardons. It's the criminal news network. You can't get on there if you have a resume. You get on there if you were convicted of a crime. Sean Spicer's on Newsmax. He lied to the American people for years. Sarah Sanders lied to the American people for years. They don't go on real news. That's why Trump said, don't watch CNN, don't watch MSNBC. Watch my right-wing propaganda outlets. Listen to the criminals that are indicted. They're going to cover up my crimes. They don't have a resume. Tucker Carlson is an actor. Sean Hannity is an actor. Laura Ingraham is an actor. They do it for the money. They don't believe anything they say. They just get a lot of money.
Oh no, they do. They do believe what they say. They're so deep in it that they believe it.
For the money.
Yeah.
For the money. How much money do they make a year?
Oh.
They don't win Pulitzer Prizes like Rachel Maddow for actually investigating. They don't ask Roger Stone or Giuliani, why were you meeting with Russians at the airport when the FBI arrested them? They don't ask the questions that should be asked. They cover. It's Russian television in America. It's what's that newspaper that's fake that everybody buys? Rupert Murdoch owns it.
The
National
Post.
Enquirer.
The Post.
The National Enquirer.
No,
it's the National
it's
Enquirer.
not the National Enquirer. It's the New York Post. National Enquirer is, Chris Ruddy. This is Newsmax now. Okay, but a lot of your facts. I don't know. Okay, Annie in North Carolina.
Hey, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I had a Brussels sprout in my mouth. Excuse me.
I cannot make
I love
myself. I was just going to say, I cannot make myself love them, and people who love them love them.
Oh, well, use coconut oil and salt and pepper. You'll love them.
I know.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know.
Anyway,
Maybe I'm not cooking them right. They're not crispy.
I just steam them.
Ooh.
Until they're soft with a fork or whatever.
No.
Anyway, the reason I'm calling, let me get this in real quick because I know what I'm on. Anyway, the Oklahoma, they passed that law that people can talk to the protesters. So somebody this morning mentioned, well, I guess it'll be okay for people to drive into the anti-abortion protesters. And I thought, wow, that makes sense. So what I did is I called James Langford's Oklahoma City office and talked to a girl named Julie and told her that. And she goes, you know what? They didn't think that all the way through. I said, wow, really? And then I started talking about other things, and she says, you're making a lot of good points. Can I have your name? And I'm like, no, you can't have my name. You can have my zip code if you're logging calls. But yes, she actually said that they didn't think that through. I said, yeah, because people are going to be able to drive through the abortion.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
So anyway, enjoy your weekend. And
thank you, you too. Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Thanks for making that phone call out there to Oklahoma from North Carolina. And you know, that's what Rhonda was saying, and Rhonda's correct too, Annie. You guys, see, you got to leave it to the women. Just saying. But it's worse than that, because when somebody drives through protesters that they do disagree with, right? And then they try and claim that law protects them from a homicide rap, you're going to find out that law is unconstitutional and it can't protect you from homicide. Anyway, have a good weekend, everybody. Be good. Be safe. Stay well.